Okay, I think we are live on YouTube, and here we go. So, Bernie, would you like me to share my screen and keep it on here?
Not now, not necessarily now, because I would like to share with the people that have come the situation. Well, Michelle, I don't know if she's there exactly at this moment because she sent a message, and I believe Alka is here. I assume. Swati is not here, but
Hi,
Yeah.
am I audible? Okay, sorry. I've been speaking all this while, but I thought my mic's volume was really down.
okay.
We welcome
Group,
your voice.
yes.
Thank you.
When Swati comes, if she comes,
Just
um,
go for it.
yes. On behalf of Nick, that is the commander-in-chief of this circle, today it's my duty or my action to be a kind of guide or teacher to this. And I had a plan, and the plan was to read quickly, not quickly, lightly the chapter, then stop and begin again chapter by chapter, paragraph by paragraph, question, exploration, whatever. But David got an idea, and I asked you, Alka, and Shant, and Michelle, if she's there, if you have read the chapter I expected you to do. That if you have done, that would leave us to directly start with the chapter and exploring it. Have you? This is not a police, but have you read it at least
Yes,
once,
yes.
Nishan?
I did not read it, sorry.
Ah, well,
Eh,
anyway.
We
Well,
can go over that. That's we can go over with the plan.
yes. Well, let's see then if we can make a quick reading and then start with the for the meaning of each paragraph and questions that we. I have to tell you, I've read it more than twice, and I have made some notes each paragraph, and I don't know if we have time for all of it, but David has brought something also about it. But I would like to introduce the reading with this that I think that is a notation that was reading, and I will read it because I took notes that, and it's like this. It seems that in this tradition or lineage has specialized in adapting the written word by transmitting the essence of the teaching. I believe that it means that the use of words and sentences could be multiply interpreted. It could be said that it was done to hide information to the known adept, but also as a means to create stimuli in the mind's reader. That's mostly the case of literature that contradicts the rational way of thinking. Reader not aware of this design will automatically call the material inconsistent or defective. That line, concepts of daily use like wine, drunken, love, that were used as symbols of states can be taken as literal or factual, only allegorical. So we must take in account that the techniques of religion and esoteric traditions can be illogical by intent. This means to me that they are designed to defeat ordinary linear sequential thinking. And this is a chapter, a difficult one, but the case that in that line, what we are reading does not pretend only to be rational and make sense immediately. Sometimes the understanding comes at the right time, and why not by accumulation? That means that a question could be answered on another text or another moment. It is to us, students, to find answers and coincidence, if they are, sometimes hidden, that goes contrary to our expectation, our usual expectations, to receive the food already chewed and pre-digested.
Mm. Nice.
So that opens that. Swat is here. That at least to me, because I read to me, but I share it with you, opens our minds not to sense or sometimes satisfaction of the rational literature, because in this lineage it has been wisdomly designed not to be factual only, but science and let's say extend our minds. Okay. So with that, I am ready to. So, Babini, do you hear me? Babini,
Yes.
Babini, do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So, we stick to the plan, David. Quick reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, your plan is what we're going to do, period.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm asking support.
You've got it.
Well,
Okay. So, let's start the reading. Nick, would you start, please?
yeah, yes. Let
Thank you.
me let me know when you guys can see it.
Yep.
Okay.
So, who is reading, Bernie? Are we reading or you, you just want to? Should we start reading?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
Nick.
think.
Nick,
Yeah. Start reading.
you read.
Yes, let's start reading. Yeah. Whoever
Yes.
wants to start. Thank
Oh no! You start reading,
Oh,
please.
okay. Thank
You
you.
start reading and go for not the not the one paragraph. Make it light, quick. Strugglers
Okay.
of the sources. Okay.
Chapter 6, Struggle of the Sorcerers. Ordinarily, the war of the forces of darkness and of light just happens mechanically within the machine. It is uncontrolled and wasted. We must find a way to organize it and make it profitable to our work.
Please.
The teacher may set the stage and throw the spotlights on something of importance, but ultimately, you are the directors, stage managers, choreographers, dancers, and audience of your work ballet.
A
Next.
ballet of work. Sorry.
Next, please. Nishan,
A
yes.
ballet, yeah. A ballet of work can be staged if only we know the characteristics of its two powerful mutual antagonists. The Prince of Darkness, who dwells in darkness and whose vision is fixated on the light, representing the awakened forces of light, and the Prince of Light, representing the sleeping forces of darkness.
Next.
Although they both use the same methods and their armies are composed of exactly the same soldiers, when one or another becomes active, their minions are of two completely opposed characters.
So I just want to stop here. So,
He wants to read through it.
sorry. Go ahead.
Just lightly read through the whole thing.
Okay, sorry, continue.
No, you read.
Oh, although they both use the same methods and their armies are composed of exactly the same soldiers, when one or another becomes active, their minions are two completely opposed characters.
The attention of the followers of the Prince of Light is fixated of fascination with which are common to the sleeping state of the machine, and is violently opposed to the awakening influence of the followers of darkness. Next. Nick.
Ordinarily, their warfare is not organized and therefore is useless for our work. We must find a way to organize their war and make it profitable to our work. In much the same way that munitions manufacturers and other industrialists foment and feed a war by providing material and continually aggravating the antagonists against each other, it is our interest to keep them in continual struggle.
In the ordinary human biological machine, we find, if we take the trouble to look, deep contradictions of feelings, thoughts, memories, phrases, and manifestations, all of which are isolated from one another by memory buffers, each only one small fraction of some unknown and chaotic whole.
All these are quite powerfully opposed to one another, and if they were not isolated by powerful mental and emotional buffers, they could not exist peacefully together in the same organism.
Science will one day come to discover that every single cell in the muscular system of the machine can function as a storage sector for moods, ideas, manifestations, and memories. These are stored at random, without regard to logic or reason, because there is no presence of attention which is able to correctly categorize each impression as it enters the biological machine. If we were to suddenly see and not just vaguely feel all these contradictions in ourselves at the same time, without the usual organic buffers, we would feel that we had gone mad.
In order to function, the machine has, somewhere along the line, placed buffers as isolating devices between these inner contradictions. It is because of these buffers that we are ordinarily able to exist very calmly despite our continually shifting centrum of gravity and a different set of opinions, ideas, and moods every moment or two.
A human machine cannot live long without buffers. Either the contradictions must be isolated in some way, or the machine must be tucked safely away in the lunatic asylum.
While the machine cannot exactly destroy its conscience in order to seek perpetual gratification, the emotional centrum, which is the activating factor of conscience, can be put to sleep by isolating the machine's contradictions. These contradictions, if taken all together, form the fragmented identity of the machine.
It is thanks to the incessant chatter of automatic inner dialogue and running commentary on our experience, which goes on continuously between these isolated, fragmentary identities that we attribute to ourselves what we call consciousness. In a rough translation of Descartes, I talk to myself, therefore I am.
This cannot help affecting adversely the transformational function of the machine. These very strong buffers have arisen in the machine over the course of years in order to prevent total breakdown. Should these buffers be tampered with by an amateur, such as the contemporary clinical psychologist, the biological machine is quickly reduced to the unquestioning, compulsive madness of ordinary social organic pursuits.
It is vital to understand that this artificial isolation occurs only because each facet of personality is stored in a different part of the machine. This occurs haphazardly, and any part of the machine's personality may be stored anywhere and be activated into reflex response by the most seemingly unrelated stimuli.
In the study of these buffered contradictions, we and categorize to ourselves the various stages of our fragmentary identities, which we are able to observe as they become active in. It is to these fragmentary states and not to ourselves that we should attribute all our attitudes, ideas, power, presence, and good states.
The human biological machine is directed by the machine's simulation of intelligence, not the real intelligence, which could be provided by the presence of the non phenomenal self in the awakened machine.
In
In a
a
human
human biological machine in which each buffer encapsulates a fragmentary identity, a continually shifting centrum of gravity changing in what may appear to be random patterns provide the appearance of a very complicated gem of many facets, but which is actually a very uncomplicated lump of carbon in the grip of certain laws from which we can free ourselves by awakening the machine.
The machine's story is a revelation of these contradictions, and by a true confession, we can effect their eventual reconciliation, which we can call the process of redemption.
by telling the real life history of the machine and not some fragmentary fantasy composed for the protection of the vanity of the machine, thus blending these contradictions, we can repair the past and redeem the machine as a transformational apparatus.
To blend
And
these,
this,
sorry,
go
no,
ahead,
no,
go
Nishant,
ahead.
please go ahead.
To blend these contradictions, it is only necessary to remove the buffers which have been placed between them, which is accomplished by the gentle art of exposure to the light of confession.
Ordinarily, we know only one third of the life story of the machine at any given moment, depending upon which fragmentary identity is active at the time. In this sense, that side of ourselves which we believe we know best and which seems to us to be our only friend is actually our deadliest enemy in the work.
In addition, we can use daily situations with potentially conflicting aims to help us stage the ballet, the struggle of the sorcerers. For example, when we are tired, we can refuse to lie down and rest. We may even do hard dig a hole or build a wall. We can, if we are attracted to sweets, place before the machine a mound of chocolate, and then for as long as possible, as long as it takes for the candy to rot, deny ourselves this little indulgence. Of course, after the candy.
We can force our biological machines to work at a different tempo than usual. We can refuse to express pleasure or displeasure in the usual ways. We can intentionally keep company with someone who ordinarily repels us, especially one whose chemistry repels us.
To force conflicting ideas to reconcile, we must be able to, if necessary, lie down and at the same time convince ourselves that we are standing. These small conflicts are easy to arrange. Later, to stage a real ballet, we must entangle these two powerful sorcerers in a genuine struggle for survival. The ballet must have a great conflict in order to attract and hold a struggle between these great forces.
No matter which side wins, it comes to the same end, because both roles are played by the same actor, the empty struggling against the void.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we can come to the big Nick, if you please, and we can explore, work together, ask questions, seek answers, whatever. Besides,
Good. Thank you, Bernie.
okay. If no one is asking any questions, I, I will state some of my interrogations. And questions in reality could what the group answer with. No, can we rephrase the confrontation of opposites? In this case, antagonist. It's a confrontation of opposites. The Prince of Light and the Prince of Light and darkness. Are they forces in reading not only once, twice, and more than twice? I saw some subtlety in the way it was exposed in this case, because it says darkness lies in darkness, but is positively looking at light. And the Prince of Light representing the sleeping force of its apparent antagonist. And I ask myself, are these two forces antagonists working together? First question.
So there's
Second question.
yeah.
Second question. Is there a similitude in this presentation between what could be the machine and the essence? That's open. Thank you. open question.
Yeah, Bernie. So when I was reading the chapter and when it talked about the Prince of Darkness and Prince of Light and how they are looking at one another in some ways, kind of reminded me of the relationship of the machine and the essential self. So I was also thinking along those lines.
The beauty that I loved was the last para, which reminds you that both of these are just ones fighting against each other. But the void is like something, if you just get that balance of both, you know? So that's what I felt was really important.
Third question, sorry. Doesn't you think or feel that the two forces and the way the paragraph is constructed appears could need each other? Hmm? Even more, do they mirror themselves?
Could you repeat the last sentence?
Do they mirror?
Your voice is breaking up, sorry.
Yes, my connection is unstable. Sorry.
Do they mirror each other?
Yes.
Mirror.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the dark and light actually reminds me of the yin and yang.
Yeah.
That's constantly, which is in my memory, you know. So but again, the question is, are we able to honestly acknowledge
Are we able to what?
acknowledge, like, you know,
Acknowledge. Yeah.
or differentiate ourselves, or be honest, like the way it's said, you know, honestly see ourselves, if we can see that this is the dark of ours and if we can accept it and this is the light, you know, or
Without putting that overlay on it, which seems to imply good and bad, right?
yeah,
Which, as soon as you do that, you know, all of the guilt and the sins and all this stuff kick in. But fundamentally, isn't this chapter asking us, do you have powerful contradictions which exist in you and you keep them apart by a buffer?
Mhm.
exactly.
I mean, on another level, and this is why I think this chapter is so critical, there's this concept. Ordinarily, the war of the forces of darkness and of light happen mechanically within the machine. And that also reminds me on a broad base, the concept of the powers and principalities in the universe. You know, and it's in the Bible, it says, "For we wrestle not against flesh, but against the principalities and powers, against the rulers of darkness and the world, you know, and the world of spiritual wickedness." So we fight against on a universal basis. When we're doing this kind of work, we are planting ourselves in a principality of light on that basis.
Yeah.
But to empower this, do you have contradictions within you that just always exist, and you have very comfortable ways to keep them apart, and then you go on to the next day, and those are called buffers. But what he's saying is, if you remove the buffer and let that dance or struggle of those sorcerers occur there's a great deal of energy, right? Doesn't that make sense? And if there's a great deal of energy there, harvest that energy and use it for our work.
David,
Yes, sir.
there is in the fourth or fifth paragraph, I don't know exactly, there is a sentence that says it is in our interest to keep them in
Yes.
continuous struggle. So, so we must remember last chapter and the sly man uses the forces of nature or whatever
Hmm.
to his benefit. Um,
Beautiful.
so, but also I think there is a protection here that these buffers are not by chance there because if we are not prepared, if we take out the buffers, there is a saying that loco ve demasiado, the crazy man sees too much. Yes, yes, takes us to a scenario that can make us a bit crazy.
Yeah.
There is a protection, I believe, so we have to go slowly in this. Um, I think this in this tradition is a concept we use that is um, we have to be stabilized first. No, we have to have some stability of action or because we are um, uh, working with high electricity. You know?
Yeah.
We have okay.
So, does he talk anywhere in this chapter about how to approach this struggle of the sorcerers?
I, I think he talks about the honesty. I think that's what struck me.
So, page 75. I think you're right. And it says the machine's story, right, is a revelation of these contradictions. And then what's the next sentence? Phrase. Robin, anybody?
Through confession. I think that's the most important, which I realized that until you confess to yourself truly that this is in you,
But read the rest of it too. Read the whole rest of that sentence.
yeah, the machine's story is a revelation of these contradictions, and by a true confession, we can effect their eventual reconciliation, which we can call the process of redemption. And even in the second para, he adds more to it by telling the real life history of the machine and not some fragmentary fantasy composed for the protection of the vanity of the machine. Thus, blending these contradictions, we can repair the past and redeem the machine as the transformational.
So I live next to this person, right? And Denise, and she's kind of, well, she's a little crazy, but you know, but basically there's a bunch of stuff that I keep wanting to hide from her.
Denise Ipavini.
Huh?
Denise.
Denise is the great artist that lives next to me.
Ah,
She's
okay. Ipavini.
been in the community for 35 years and
Okay.
she's a brilliant worker. But I noticed that I try to hide certain things from her.
Okay. Why is that?
Isn't that just right there, the next sentence? So wait a minute. Bernie, are you asking me to make a true confession here?
Yes and no.
Take the bull by the horns, brother.
No, because I made some notes that I would like to
Go for it.
share. One is I looked at in the dictionary the word redemption. One is the usual religious one, the action of saving or be saved from sin, from error. And another one is like in commerce, it's the action of regaining a possession in exchange of payment or clearing or, there are
Yeah.
two ways of seeing that. But there is a mixture, at least for me, maybe you understand it, the Catholics have made the thing of confession something very evil, that's to say, because it can bring a lot of feelings that you open your heart and that you can following the confession is the satisfaction. You in the Catholicism, you tell your sins, and the preacher says, okay. You pray to him, and you feel relief. But
Well, that's the mechanics of the Catholic Church.
yes, and there is also it's also the confession of police. Police knows that when we confess. Sometimes we need to confess because it's a burden we carry or whatever. I don't think this what we are reading is in that line.
Well, I don't know.
I would say no.
What I realized about confession is not confessing to others. Like what I realized was like just my own experience. I realized that, since 10 years, like I had not accepted that I had a certain vanity about myself. I was in this, whatever it was, but a sudden light bulb went off when I realized and I confessed to myself that that is what I was in that phase. So it was never to anybody else, like not like the confession of the church, that you say saying to somebody. But I realized that it has to happen inside of being aware that the darkness exists, and that will suddenly make you be okay with it, So I think that's what I felt was
I agree with what you said, but there's a word that I tend to react, and you said evil. I don't think there is any evil, or it is what we are. We are what we are.
I agree with Bernie.
Nothing evil, but what I mean is that the vanity that you had about you, do not even realize that you have vanity, do not even accept it, the vanity of the biological machine, not even accept that you have vanity, right?
Yeah, but maybe having vanity, maybe there's a positive side to having vanity.
Nothing wrong with it, but just to be aware that you have it. Sometimes in a spiritual, like, it's like an illusion, that you're all just, all giving and this and that. But suddenly you realize that you're trying to live up that image. But to just be aware that you have vanity in you and be okay with it, just to have that realization.
Well, that's a lot of what which HBM in this book is about, is noticing.
Exactly.
Okay. So let me just, I did read an article on confession. And it says the first part of confession is to have contrition or remorse for our sins. And then there's a disclosure of those sins. Catholic Church, of course, if they can use that terms. And then the penance. So for me to interpret it in this way, the first one would be, instead of to have remorse for our sins, it'd be to recognize it and to say, this is a contradiction within me, to really realize that. That's a thing of beauty. I personally think that the act of disclosure gives power to the art of noticing it in ourselves. It empowers it. It actually takes its external power away.
David, I won't ask your permission. I would like to, very quick, I would like to, something that I wrote, and it's not my word. While reading that thing about
Tired of feeling bloated every morning?
the redemption, something came to my thought. Maybe some of you know that this guy, Chogyam Trungpa, that was the guy that brought to the West the Maya. And
He
he
was a
talks
friend
about,
of EJ. He was a friend of EJ.
how nice, yes. And he talks about spiritual materialism as the major obstacle that people must sort in their spiritual development. And I quote, he says, we convince ourselves that we are spiritually growing, are only reinforcing our egocentrism by the use of spiritual techniques. There are so many things that we can convert us, especially changing what we used to be, that we believe we are traveling a spiritual path. But the real change is if we can put in suspension our wants, our greed and habit of gaining. And I put in brackets the mood. That is the real difficulty, and in the way that demands us recollecting steam power, for instead of that, start giving without reserve and not being proud of that. Because we tend to be vanity about
Oh,
our, I
Yeah.
see, you know. And there is I finish with a phrase that I learned. It comes many times to my mind. It says, if your own vice is the search for virtue, recognize it. Thank you.
That's beautiful. And I think even in this third para, he adds more
Go for it. Go for it.
to blend these contradictions. It is only necessary to remove the buffers which have been placed between them, which is accomplished by the gentle art of exposure to the light of confession. So again, like all he's emphasizing is just, that as well.
So recognizing the contradictions, because there are contradictions, there's a battle between them. As long as you, you have vanity, so, you're not going to go out of the house with your hair all like this, because, it'll bother that vanity. Well, what if you did? No one would care, but you know what I mean? It's like, but if you start acting on those, breaking the buffer apart, vanity is not that great a one, because I think we need to have a particular form of vanity, but as it relates to the world, not as it relates to our ego. Okay. Our ego, we all have vanity, okay? But I'm just stuck on this thing about disclosure and confession, the light of confession. Does anybody think that confession means to others, or is it just in yourself?
I think it's being honest to yourself.
And I think once you're honest to yourself, it'll automatically spill out. Like then you do, what I realize is that the buffers, right? What he's talking of to blend these contradictions, it is only necessary to remove the buffers. So mostly like when we see something which is the so-called negative, socially negative, we start creating buffers to it. But instead of creating buffers, if we just accept it, that this is it, just like water and fire and air, if we can just see it, that this is it. And once that acceptance is there, then the buffer will slowly go away. But the buffer will stay until we expose ourselves to that, right? So
Pavini, can you give an example of one of these situations of social buffers?
uh, any any example. For example, I suddenly say my daughter scratched my little one, and I suddenly got mad at her. And the moment I got mad, I noticed that I got mad. I just said that, why did you do that? And I screamed at her, that why did you do that? And the moment I screamed, the moment that sentence came out, I suddenly realized my anger and everything. And the moment that happened, the buffer was that she did this, that's why I screamed. So the moment something which is not in your control, right? Like it suddenly happened and you realize that, oh, you should not be mad or you should. But the thing is, when you just suddenly realize that anger happened, then then it does not matter that she scratched. So the automatically, once you remove that buffer, that it doesn't matter whether she scratched or not, just to see that your voice changed. And the moment you notice the voice changed, then what happens is that you notice that the anger is there in you. And now, how can you not pass it on to somebody else and just like this is just like
So,
the smallest example.
so you're saying that buffers then are like the cracks in between walls which allow negative force to manifest anyway, your
No,
negative emotions to manifest anyway. So you're saying buffers are a refuge for negative emotions to enter.
yes, because what happens is that it makes you okay to be that, right? Like it gives you the okay that because she scratched, it's okay for
So,
me to scream. So that
yes.
buffer is that okay signal for the body to do whatever it did. But if
So,
you just
so,
noticed that the voice changed and something came out, which might kind of got her scared, that I said it. So the moment that expression comes out, you notice that, okay, this happened in me. And then you just say, why did you do it? And then you try to create an empathy in her that, sorry, I got upset,
right.
So
So,
then that awareness is there without the buffer.
exactly.
It
So then
is.
that's where my question lies, that then we are saying that buffers, the sentence somewhere in the chapter said that we must keep the struggle between the Prince of Light and Prince of Darkness alive. So these negative emotions are what is created between the struggle of the Prince of Darkness and the Prince of Light, right? So that we're saying then that the buffers are in a way useful for our work.
It
Is that
is what I would choose a more practical way of not making trouble with words. Um, eyes, eyes, and in the daily day to day, you can find it because we are one with the boss. We are one with our children. We are one with our husband. We are one with the police. We have a lot of ones, and those eyes are useful because the problem is that if you don't understand somehow that these eyes are taking the place of the master at that moment, you get mad because you ask yourselves who I am. All of those is you. All of
Exactly.
those.
Right.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's, I think that's where the awareness comes in. Because to accept yourself being mad, like again, not feeling guilty, but just accepting that that is there in you, right?
So are buffers useful in that case? Like, are buffers useful for us?
Buffers, no, the buffers are actually something that you have to be aware of that the buffer came in. Like it does not matter whether it's useful or not, but just to realize that where the buffer popped in to make it okay or to make you do that. You get that?
So
Because
then it also
slowly
says it is our responsibility to keep that struggle alive. And that's where I feel buffers come in keeping that struggle alive.
but slowly, as he's saying in the third para, to blend these contradictions, it is only necessary to remove the buffers which have been placed between them. So again, like to be this or that, but not to be any of that, to just be, you know, to not be mad or to not be calm, to just be.
So my point was coming in from the space that everything that comes in work, including the negative manifestation or the energy that comes in and the buffer that allows the space for it to come in, everything is useful on the path.
Yes.
Everything will be useful to make you grow, but slowly, I think the buffers will have to go and for us to just see that
Yeah.
this is us. Like
Of course,
100%.
it's like those people who come in our lives to teach us, you know. They would hurt us, they would belittle us, they would do everything to us. But at the end of it, we are thankful for them, for our growth. So yeah. So and also I wanted to quickly address the point that David has spoken about exposing in confession and bringing out. I feel it's like a carpet, like it's like that furniture that you don't move in the day-to-day cleaning, and then you move it and you see a lot of dirt and you start addressing it. Um, so that's the point I've been meaning to make, that it's that now it's out there in the open, now you can't really ignore it, right? It's written on the wall. As long as you do your day-to-day cleaning and you're like everything is clean and sparkly, you don't confess, and it just stays
Right.
where it is.
The problem is that we have this tendency to say, I am an angry person, or I am a person filled with vanity. No, you're not. Vanity works in your machine. Anger works in your machine. So blending the contradictions. So, and Bhavani, I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything, but so you're in this with this medical professional, and they damaged your child. Okay. Now the anger is the unmitigated way that the machine responds. Right? Just that was mechanical.
Exactly.
I mean, if you had a large saber, you might have taken the person's head off in a different society. Okay, just
Mhm.
but so are you angry? Are you an angry person?
Anger just comes and goes.
Anger works in you.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. It works in you. So when you come into that exact same posture where you have this infinite defense of the children, which you should have, right? And somebody has harmed that defense, And you know your machine well enough to know I'm going to be angry and spit at this person. But what if you could blend that contradiction at that moment? You don't change the anger, don't hide from it, but use it appropriately as maybe the anger is a bell that rings and says, you need to pay more attention, or you need to speak out. Speaking out is proper. Anger may not be in your own personal interest. We're at the end of time, but I wanted to just say, really, Bernie, I don't know what you have in mind for the next week or two or three, but
I have something in mind,
thank you.
David. I have
Please.
something in mind. Something in mind is needs more experiment or questions, and I am glad to finish my teacher role, and I tag you because I think you brought some things to this that you haven't time. So I will tag you for the next Monday. Is it
Who?
okay? You. I
Oh,
will
no,
tag
no,
you.
no. You're not going to get off that. You're not going
No,
to get off that
no.
easily.
But I think yes, and I think you brought something. You said at the beginning that you weren't able to share.
Yeah.
So you
So
can
I have
next time.
two
Next time.
important concepts, but I want the people to work on it. One concept is the concept of confession. Okay. The other one is the concept of redemption. What is redemption? Now that my priest now likes me, or what does it mean in our work? Does it not mean that we've redeemed our essential self for work, for our higher work with the absolute? How can I get that back? You know, when you get a coupon sometimes and you go buy marshmallows and it says if you buy marshmallows, you get 50 cents, right? So you buy the marshmallows and then you redeem that coupon. Right? So how can we redeem ourselves in this struggle of the sorcerers?
You, David, for next time. It's your turn.
I miss,
Well,
I, thi-
I miss
I, thi-
Alka's teaching last last week.
it was very good, very good. So can you hold in your mind the concept of confession, contradictions within yourself, and buffers?
yes.
So that's the critical thing that he's saying here. We have powerful forces in ourselves which we hold apart. Like I went to a restaurant with a friend, and when I left, I had a pizza box because there was pizza. I didn't want my neighbor to see that pizza box. I didn't want her to think I was eating pizza,
Yeah.
but I was eating pizza.
Secrets.
So every time I order junk food, I have to confess here, right?
Right. I mean, that would be a way. So, bottom line
If you
is
want to.
the bottom line is, or do you need to, Nikhil, for your own redemption? Sometimes the contradictions are so powerful that you need the help of others to confess to the other. That gives you power of self-reflection. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a very, very wonderful chapter. It gives us many opportunities. And thank you, Bernie, for leading us. And
And One last thing I wanted to mention is that when they spoke about the example of staying with your temptations, like he gave an example of the chocolate, it reminded me of the example you'd given David once, that you go to this, what was it, a pastry shop or a what is it, donut shop?
Gas
What was it?
station, just a gas station.
No, there was an example you gave
Yeah,
earlier.
that's when I would take Jana, Michelle, to the gas station.
Oh
She
yeah,
get,
I know that story really well.
she can
You're
get,
right, Alka, it's exactly.
she can get cigarettes and Taco Bell,
Yeah, so
and I'd get a Krispy Kreme donut,
Yeah.
and I put it in this little bag next to my seat, and it's sitting there. Literally, I can tell you, I'm going to try to record it next time. It's talking to me. The donut was talking to me, okay? So I didn't want to abuse it, but I put it on the counter over there.
Sounds like you had some mushrooms, David.
And after a few days, it's as hard as a rock. Okay. So that's an example of something that I did. And so, but watch when you get nervous about other people noticing that you have this or that habit. That's a great prize of great value. You know,
Yeah.
like you don't want people to think you're a jerk. So you're not going to say something stupid, whatever the heck that means. You know, you don't want to embarrass yourself. That might be the worst thing in the world. I guarantee you, everybody here has already embarrassed themselves, whether they know it or not, or they want to admit it or not. So what? These are our friends, our colleagues in the work, and sometimes I need help from you. Okay? And thus, one method I have of seeking that help is a light confession. So I tell you, I got to go pretty quick because that pizza's getting cold. So
Uh-oh. I'm hungry now.
that's a mechanical reaction. See, that's just automatic.
yeah.
It's not your brain thinking da 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 da. So
Yeah.
notice when you are potentially embarrassed. Let's say you're Bhavani, you're embarrassed, but you don't want your kids to see you doing this, your husband doing that, your friends doing that. Michelle, you live in a you know a steam burner, and you don't want people to think of you in a certain way. It's a huge issue with you. You know that. Or Bernie, what is it that, this goes on? And Nikhil, of course, is already there, so not a lot to say, but he's clarity and perfection. Excuse me, never mind. What is potentially embarrassing to you is a hint where a great struggle might be available to you. Anyway, so sorry.
Thank you all, and
Bernie,
we see you next Monday. And well, I I have tagged David, so that's
I'm looking forward to next week.
yes. Bye.
what if I can't
Bye.
make it? I might not be able to make it.
Ah, David, come
I'm
on.
busy.
David, you didn't even open your
Wow.
book of excuses. You just came with it without
Yeah,
opening.
Let's deliver
yeah, he's like
pizza.
through with the
Excuse
excuses.
number.
I
Excuse
know them
number.
by heart. Helga, I know them
Ex-
by heart.
Let's
Excuse.
deliver donuts and pizza to his place next Monday. He'll be there.
Excuse number 7. Okay.
Have a good evening, everybody.